Hello guys, this is William here for a new video. Since the last one, I've been implementing Instagram style filters and image editing for sketch elements. When I got started with this project, I immediately knew that this would be the most interesting part to implement. The one with the player control and audio in the music kit was quite interesting, but I knew that this would be the most exciting one, and it didn't disappoint, that's for sure. I didn't do any live recording for this one because it required a lot of investigation and it would have been super boring to watch. But now that I've done it, I would love to show it to you actually. Yeah, so this is how it looks like. So I have my old iPhone 6, so that's what you're seeing on the screen. So you have the list of pictures. I can select one, and you see on the bottom screen you have the activity indicator that draws OpenGL scene. It takes a few seconds for the first scene to be drawn, but I also looked at the list of OpenGL issues which have been fixed for the SDK version 26, and it looks like it might be, I could be wrong, but it looks like it might be much faster in SDK 26 to draw the first scene. But anyways, I can select a filter, and I can also crop the image. So you see it all runs very smoothly, and the boundaries of the crop work nicely, and I can also rotate the image. It's also all using native animations, except for the value of the rotation, but it's done in a subcomponent, so it doesn't trigger any rendering on the slider or the image rotation. So this is why we get such a smooth animation. And it works. I tested it on my Android device. It works great as well. You can check it out, of course, on Expo. So you can go to react-native.shop and try it with Expo on your own device, and let me know what you think. By the way, a big thank you to you guys for some of the nice words you've been sending me and some of your messages. Also, the last video was about React Native images, and I published this library for image caching with Expo, and it contains some substantial bugs, which thanks to you guys I was able to fix. And so I hope you take I get great value from this library. I hope you can get some value out of it as well. And overall I'm really enjoying the sense of community in React Native. There are, for instance, on this topic of image filters and image editing, I was quite a beginner, and I got tremendous support from amazing people, namely Gaëtan Renaudot, who's the author of GL React, Nikhilesh Sigatapu, who's I think the main contributor of the OpenGL library in Expo, Brent Vatney, of course, and also Evan Bacon, who does a lot of cool stuff with Pixie.js for Expo. And it's kind of cool because when I got started with React Native 1.5 years ago, and the way it felt, it was, so there is this big innovation where you can really, it's very disruptive technology, I find, to build apps. And so we had this great innovation, but also it was so new that no one, people were poking at different things, no one knew yet really, how to how to do things. It was really cool to have this mix of like great innovation, but also like this hacker mentality. So I always enjoy the community very much. And now with things like Expo, for instance, things are getting much more mature, much more professional, I would say. But still, it's an amazing community, and it's so interesting to see how it's evolving. And so yeah, let's have a look so you've seen the demo. Maybe I'm gonna start the emulator now, and let's have a look how it's done. Oops, drop the microphone. I'd love to show you a bit how it's done. So maybe I can close this. So the image filters are implemented using the OpenGL view in Expo, and the library I'm using on top of it is GL React. I looked at, there are many libraries available if you want to use OpenGL in your React Native project. One which seems quite interesting is this one, which allows you to use pixie.js in Expo. Yes, it seems to be quite a good fit to do for such a use case, but there is really one library that caught my intention, and it's GL React. And the best, I think, introduction for the library is to go on YouTube, and there is an amazing talk from Gaëtan Renaudot from the React JS Conf. Maybe if I just Google GL React. Yeah, so this video, I strongly recommend it if you want to have a good introduction into the library, and I think also an introduction of the paradigm he has built on top of between React and OpenGL. I think it really makes sense, and it allows you to mix the composability of React and use the capabilities of OpenGL. And actually, I can show you what I mean right now in the code. So definitely check out this video. It's great. I think the paradigm really makes sense. And so if we look at this screen, the way it's implemented, I have here a filter component, which is this image you see here on top. And so if we open the filter component, we use a surface component that comes directly from GL React to display the scene. And then I have all the available filters nested with one another. And there is a property filter name which activates the required filter. And at the top bottom component is a GL image, which simply draws the image in OpenGL. And if we look at one component, for instance, Valencia, so the shader is, I copied it from an open source library. There are many of these shaders available on GitHub. I found a couple of repositories that you can use. And so we use a node from GL React. If the filter is disabled, we pass through the texture, and if not, we apply the filter. And that's how we can just have these filters working. So it's very cool because you can use really the composability of React and use like OpenGL features at the same time. I really like it. And yeah, so what happens here, you see that as I mentioned it before, so now if I click on let's say a different image, it takes a few seconds for the OpenGL scene to be ready. Apparently it might be faster. There is a likelihood that it might be much faster in Expo 26. I might also have missing something which I didn't find out yet. And while the scene is drawing, all other touches on the screen won't be available, so that's why I'm not displaying them yet. And the way I get notified that the scene is ready is using the onDraw event. So I have an implementation of GL image, which using the onDraw property from the node component from GL React. So as soon as the scene is drawn, I display the buttons and I know that everything is available to the user. Now one thing we can look at is rotation. So I've built a rotation component, so you can see it here. So you can just slide so the way I implemented it, I have two components essentially, a scroll view and a linear gradient. So I can show you what the linear gradient looks like on top of the scroll view. Let's have a look. So it's drawing the scene. So this is how the gradient looks like, and then I put the scroll view on top, which contains as a content white rectangles which are separated with each other with a thin margin, and that's what gives you this nice slider effect. So you see that's how you build this effect. Then I'm using an animated value for the onScroll event, and I use, so if I go in, photo, I'm interpolating, the animated value from the scroll to rotation degrees. But yeah, so I'm using the rotate animated value to transform the view that contains the picture. So it allows us to, use only native animated driver, so everything runs super smoothly. And then to display the rotation value, I use a subcomponent. And the reason I use a subcomponent is to not re-render either the scrolling, the slider component, or the picture component. So I add a listener to the animation value that simply displays the number of degrees. So this part is not, requires a lot of work in the JavaScript thread, but it's not affecting the part which is natively animated. So it's very nice. I really like it. And finally, the last part is the cropping component. And the way I implemented it, I used a pan responder. It was the first time I used one, so it was really cool to get some experience with this API. So this is this component is a rectangle you see on the screen. I mean, that's the container of this crop rectangle. So you have the border here of the crop component, and each corner has its own pan handler. And here I'm using I'm using an outer view because for this rounded corner to be displayed on Android. If I wouldn't use this outer view, I would have to put absolute negative positioning on these corners for the round, the circle to go outside the boundaries, but it wouldn't work on Android. So I used this trick for the crop rectangle to display nicely on both platforms. And basically what I'm doing for each pan responder, so I have a top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right. I'm capturing the values and I'm translating. So I have this for methods set left, set right, set top, set bottom, which all they're doing is translating the X and Y coordinates of each pan handler into the absolute position of the whole crop component. So we have the position property, which contains the absolute positioning of the crop component, and based on the received value, I'm computing the absolute positioning. So what I'm doing here in each if else is checking out the boundaries. So if right is greater than 0, it means we are outside the picture, so we stop at 0. And also we don't want the right side to have, for instance, X coordinate smaller than the left side. And I have not only smaller, but also smaller minus some boundary, which is set to 100 pixels here, I think. And so that allows us to not have the left side go over the right side, the bottom side on top of the top side, and so on. And so, yeah, the absolute positions are computed, and then we use set native props to set the positioning of the element without triggering a rendering on the JavaScript side. So this is why it feels so smooth when you're playing with it on a real device. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. If you have any questions regarding this topic, please let me know. I think it was really cool to get some experience with OpenGL, but also using advanced gestures like to implement the cropping component. So I'm really excited. I think we're gonna be back to live coding now, because all the screens that are left to be implemented in the UI kit are seems to be pretty straightforward, also based on on the components we already have built. So especially if we look at the last UI kit, the travel kit, it seems to be only using components which we have built already. So should be nice to do using live coding. I will probably do one later today. And so that was image filters and image editing using React Native. Please let me know what you think, and I'm looking forward to do a new live coding session with you guys. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.